Welcome to episode 45 of the Landlady Boss podcast. I'm here with my
Hello.
co-host and sister, Rachel. I'm sure spring is a busy time for all property managers and for you too. It's finally
Yes,
hit
no,
here.
spring is definitely the time when I just got a request for ants coming in and we need to spray around the foundation, and it's just like, oh yes, spring has brought its joys. But yeah, absolutely.
Right. It is nice to have that weather, but with that weather, as landladies, comes some things like you're saying, you've gotten some requests for bugs spraying and different things because with that weather comes pests and all sorts of things. So that's why we thought it was a great idea to do a spring maintenance podcast, all the things you need to do for your properties in the spring. We did one back in the fall about winter prep, and now we are going to be doing the spring so you can get your properties ready to go for the busy season. As we know, the spring summer is the busy turnover season, and so you really don't want to delay on those maintenance things and say, well, I've got months to do it, because for one, you want to make sure that your properties are ready to go when you start having your busy tenant turnover time. So you're going to want those properties to be show ready and have all those maintenance tasks done so you can just turn over your units as quickly as possible. And there is some overlap just because a couple times a year you are doing some of these same inspections and checking these things. But yeah, you're looking at some different things. And I think let's start with the exterior, because that is what we're looking at with spring, like what projects need to be done that take good weather, or what damages were done in the winter. What things didn't do so well with all the ice and snow if you live in a cold climate. So let's start with the exterior, and this is where some prevention can go a long way in helping you offset some of those huge maintenance costs down the road. So checking your gutters and downspouts, of course, that's going to be key to keeping your roof and your fascia boards, all these things in good shape, your soffits. Checking the drainage issues and any signs of water pooling. I know just with the spring rains, we've already had a couple of properties that have had some leaks that we are getting roof inspections done and checking out like what things we need to do to make sure that these leaks are fixed and in good repair. So any standing water you have, we had one, my 7 unit there, there was a lot of standing water with just all the spring rains that were coming. And so we could follow that water and kind of backtrack and see, okay, is this something that needs, a tile in the ground or downspout extensions, or, what do we need to do so that we don't have this standing water that could be leaking into the foundation or basement area or causing problems with siding or, any of that kind of hassle.
It's really important to look where the downspout is coming out, where the gutter is coming out and it hits the ground by the house. Because if you're starting to see the erosion, that could be leading the water going down to the foundation, find a crack and come in the basement or crawl space. So seeing that erosion happen, that is a really good tell that you need to be putting an extender in, bringing it further away from the house. Anywhere where the ground starts slanting away, that's where you can dump the water so that it definitely pours away from the house. So that's a really good one for spring, because you're going to get a lot more water with all the rain and the snow melt than you might get throughout the year.
Right. Yeah, that's a good time to check that out. And you're also going to be able to do like a visual inspection and see, well, how is the siding? Does it need painted? Or if it's not a paintable siding, this is a good time to power wash it so it looks good for the coming renting season, and keeping the windows clean and checking out the lawn and landscaping. Do you need to spruce it up? Are there projects in that area that you need to do? Or the sidewalks, do they need fixed up or patched? Or you just taking kind of that visual inspection. Do you need to trim back the plants? Do you need to do mulching? All that kind of stuff. And if you have any fences or gates, checking those to make sure that they're still in good repair. So it's just a really good time to kind of take that inventory of the exterior and say, okay, what projects need to be done while we have good weather? Your property. I mean, if they're new ones, okay, it takes some time to get through different seasons to kind of see what they need. But if they're properties that you've owned for a while, this should kind of be clockwork now. Okay, this is the area that we have to watch, or we have to be careful with this, and just making sure that those are being addressed. And also checking the trees or tree branches or things that may have fallen or that could fall. So checking that and making sure the roof is clear of any debris that have fallen during the winter. So that's going to be important. And schedule. The nice thing about doing the spring maintenance checklist now is you can get those contractors scheduled and on their list now, because just because you in July do this and say, hey, I need this done right now, they're going to be booked. They're going to be full. So you really want to get on their radar now so you can actually get these projects done in the next month or two.
Yeah, which brings us to our HVAC. Now, this is one of the places where if you wait, where everybody else waits until it's really and it does work and your tenants are really, they're complaining, then you're in trouble. But if you actually right now in the spring schedule your HVAC to come do clean out, take your AC condensers and spray them all out so they have dirt and dust from the winter, get them sprayed off. And then they'll work so much better, and you'll actually have been able to do it when you want to, not just waiting for 2 or 3 weeks when they can fit you in. So
because then when that first heat wave hits, everyone's having issues and you can't get anyone to come out. So doing that now and just replacing the air filters, making sure that those are fresh and clean for the upcoming warm season, and checking the thermostats, making sure they have fresh batteries. I know as we do 2 inspections a year on our properties, and so this is a time we start scheduling those inspections because we did it also in the fall, so just kind of every 6 months, and that's something that we check on the inspection, that the thermostats are working, that they have fresh batteries, that the air filters are clean and ready to go. So that's just going to make things run so much smoother for you guys when the hot weather hits. Making sure the water heater is working fine, any leaks you can see, and then checking just the plumbing around even the spigots and the house, making sure that they're not leaking or having problems, and then inside under the sinks. And this is just a time you just want to take a good assessment to make sure that you're aware of any issues so you're not surprised later on. And it's depending if you replace the filters or if your tenants do, but it's a really good time to send out that kind of spring reminder saying, hey, make sure you replace the filters if that's something the tenants do, or hey, what's a good time we can come do an inspection and check everything out, and just be communicating with those tenants now.
it's nice because if twice a year you're in the apartment, you can either catch things before they happen. Let's say a small leak is happening under the sink. Nobody would notice until it's mildewed and mold and rotted out all of the inside of the cabinetry. Or you catch it now, and the longest that it's been going would be 6 months if it started the day after your last inspection. So it's really good to do these. Also, you can check to make sure they're following their contract. Are they starting to become hoarders, or are they smoking, or do they have pets they're not supposed to, or these sort of things. When you're inside an apartment, this gives you a chance to know that they are obeying their side of the contract, and so that when it comes time to renew, you've been inside and you could say, yeah.
Exactly. And it seems kind of like a headache. Oh my gosh, twice a year you've got to, especially if you have a high volume of units, but it is so worth it because you are getting eyes on the rental. You can make a list of things that need done immediately, and then we'll also make notes of things that, okay, this is on the radar for future, so you can budget accordingly, and you do know if they're following the contract or not. For instance, we had one rental that I periodically do drive-bys just to glance at the property. Also in the inspection too, they had their whole front porch had started to look like a Salvation Army, like racks and racks of clothes and all these used things, and which could bring its own issues with pests or rodents, and just it looked really dumpy, so we reached out to them and said, this is not going to work. You can't have all this stuff. And they were collecting a bunch in the back shed. They were very kind about it. They said, okay, no problem. We've been taking donations and then trying to sell them for a program that their son was working on or whatever. And I said, I understand, but you can't have it on the front porch, junking up the neighborhood and just all of the trash and debris. So they had to come up with another decision. But if we hadn't had eyes on the, 6 months, a year late, who knows how much stuff could have accumulated. And so just keeping an eye on it's going to be really important, because those small things, they add up fast. That's why you're going to want to be in there And my recommendation is at least twice a year. And
Hmm.
that depends also on the unit. You might have some units that you're like, every 3 months I want to go in there. So it's not like a hard and fast rule that you have to, all the units have to be once a year. All of them have to be twice. If you have some that you're like, I just want a closer eye on this, or maybe it's an older home that just might have more maintenance issues, you can schedule those inspections quarterly even. So, I mean,
Hmm.
I wouldn't go monthly. That just sounds like a big headache on everyone's end. But you're wanting to see signs of, yeah, if there's pest issues or ant problems or rodents, or if they're chewing on the lines, or you're looking for those signs in the basements and attics, and you're going to want to get those taken care of and sprayed and handled. And just inspecting the windows and screens, are the screens broken? Are the sashes on the window broken? Are things, needing repaired so that the house is well insulated? And just mold damage maybe in the bathrooms, or if you have bubbling paint, was there water issues somewhere? I mean, all these things are going to be important to see. And we do have our free damage inspection check-in and check-out form on our website, landladyboss.com. I highly recommend you go there and download them, because this is going to save you so much time and headache. And so you can just fill those out, you make notes, and you take pictures, and then you have the tenant sign off on it, so then they are aware of the issues too, and they can tell you anything they have. So, and legally it helps you if you're going to court, like I am, that you have those documents. So it's
Right.
a really good thing to do. So head over to landladyboss.com if you want copies of those documents. If this is something that you don't do but you want to start doing, it's going to be really helpful.
Yeah, it's really good. You also, if they do have animals, this is when you start seeing that they are eating the baseboards, they're chewing them up, or they're doing something that, like maybe you see the
Right.
first couple bites, but a year later, the whole thing would be
Yeah.
good.
Or if there's extra animals in there that aren't supposed to be
Yes.
there, you can
Yes.
address that. There's just
Mhm.
a lot of things that you can nip
Yeah,
in the bud before it gets worse. And testing the
absolutely.
smoke detectors, or making sure that there are smoke
Mhm.
detectors and fire extinguishers, because legally, you could show, well, they were functioning when we did our regular inspection, and we have documentation of that if there, heaven forbid, was an issue. So, you're showing that you are maintaining them well and doing all that you can to make sure that they are operating.
Right.
So that's going to be
Good.
super important. And then just looking, like you're saying, the general wear and tear, our cabinet doors missing, our light fixtures broken, are there gouges in the floor, or floor pieces
Hmm.
coming up, or, just all these things that are going to give you a feel for if the tenant is doing their
Yeah.
part or what you need to do. And then often
Yeah.
we will, if a tenant asks for renewal, we'll go back to these inspection forms, or we have these
Hmm.
pictures, or we will reassess and say, hey, let's look at this again and see. And,
Hmm.
if it's a tenant that's not taking care of the place, that comes into play when we are deciding to renew or not. So, you're not
Right.
just kind of going, okay, they paid every month, I haven't heard anything from them in a year, sure, let's renew. Whereas your property could be totally going into disrepair.
Yes. No, and a lot of people, that's what I hear is I haven't been in there for 6 years. So they have no idea how bad it got, because they just have not been
No
in there.
idea.
So yeah, so it's an important one.
Right. Oh, I had a tenant last week ask, about a renewal, and, we had been in there and knew that they were not taking very good care of it, and that they were often behind and
Hmm.
late, and just some other issues we were having. And, we just said, no, we're not going to be renewing you this lease turnover and stuff. And, of course, they're not very happy with it. Or, they said, what do you have against
Right.
us? Or what personally do you? And I'm like, it's nothing personal. We
Hmm.
just decided to not renew you at this time. And you just keep it very professional and lay it out like that. But you have real
Hmm.
information that you can make these decisions on, not just, I've never heard from them, they're great tenants, renew.
Hmm. Right. Right. No, which brings us to the spring turnover. So spring and summer are a huge time when everyone's moving. Schools are out, and so this is the time when they're looking for if they need a larger place, or kids graduate and they're leaving, or there's a lot of turmoil in people's lives and turnover that happen in the spring and
Right.
summer. And so you are getting everything ready, but that means see who is moving out, who's up for renewal in the next 3 months. Let them know, hey, are you renewing? And then you now have time to list, get it done while there's the bigger amount of people looking, the larger amount of people interested in and signing a new contract, and that's when you want to be posting yours. So yeah, the spring is when
Exactly.
you look at all of that and update all of your numbers. And
Right. And if you're like us, we specifically plan our renewals or move outs within a set time frame, then yeah, this is your busy season, because I think we've mentioned before, May 1st to September 1st is my window that I have for the leases to end, and try to spread them out in that few month period, just because of, like you're saying, that's when people want to move. That's when they're ending school seasons and they want to move during the summer. And I have found that when people move during difficult times to move, like the winter or even holidays or different things, usually there's a reason. Like if you can't plan or organize your life, it's usually due to an emergency or like a eviction or like a problem. Not always, but if you can put your leases ending and starting in that time frame, it's not only better for you because you're scheduling the maintenance done during the nice weather, but you can plan on having when people are moving in and out, and the type of tenants you want are probably going to be ones that are scheduling and planning these moves more than just like a emergency moves.
Here's a fun tip. If you have multi-family housing and you have an extra like meter for the house meter, let's say you have power to the house meter, if you have sprinklers inside like a fire riser room, or if you have sprinklers outside, then you'd have a water bill that's just for the house meter. And so that's something that you can turn off for the winter. If you're blowing out your sprinklers, you can call the water company and you can get them to turn it off. So let's say from November to March, it's off. Instead of getting that that standard minimum fee of $30 a month, you don't have to pay that if you turn it off for winter. So that you just have to let them know each season. So that's a really fun tip that'll save a lot of money. Yeah.
That's huge because they always have those base fees, and if you're
Yes.
paying it but not using any water, that can add up over the winter. But now is the time you'd want to call them. I've already scheduled, our property that has sprinklers. May 1st, they're going to come and turn it on. So, but you do have to call them. But that's a really good tip.
And you need to schedule your backflow test if your city requires that. And a backflow test makes sure that your sprinkler system does not go back in. It can't bring water back through it so that it's contaminating the water supply. So that's a backflow test is required in a lot of.
I don't where I live, but that's good to know. I hadn't thought about that. So
backflow test. Yeah. Things that to take care of. But you have lots of ways to stay organized. I have inspection. So I have a program I use on Buildium, but before that, I would create a form on Google, and you can create Google Forms, and then whoever's going through, they can go through the form and click the boxes. You can do it by paper and scan it in any way you do it, but make sure that you have a system that is sustainable and keeps the records so that you have really good records of all the things that you've done and what repairs need to be done so that you're.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I like Maintain X. I've used that. I mentioned that before, but I use that because tenants can screen the QR code and send me maintenance requests, and then I can send that out to my technicians, and then they get that and they have a work order, and then they can click when it's done and they put notes and there's pictures. So I've really found Maintain X to be good for me too. So make sure you have a good maintenance system and have something that you can keep good records and automate that, and have a checklist and inspection form. All these things are going to help you keep your properties running smoothly and help you to not go crazy during the busy season. So really important things. Hopefully these tips help and help your properties look beautiful and for things to run smoothly as we get into the warm weather. Enjoy the beautiful sunshine, and remember, no one can manage your properties as well as you.